In this episode, Liss and I are going to kind of continue from our previous recording. So if you didn't see that one just yet, where we were talking about emotions are thought, we're going to take it a little further and talk about how behaviors are thought.
Hi, and welcome to Light for Life. If you are returning to our channel, thank you. We value and appreciate you. If you are new here, you are most welcome. I am Liss. I'm a Science of Mind practitioner and a teacher of various healing modalities applicable to all aspects of the self and this life.
And I am Lori. I am a holistic wellness researcher and educator. Welcome to Connections with Liss and Lori. Even though thought is somewhat invisible, it's a little elusive. Thought can actually manifest in emotion and in behavior and in circumstances and. So while behavior might seem instinctive, kind of a knee-jerk reaction, it's actually a form of thought, even though it's super fast. There's almost zero time between the thought and the behavior. That's how frequency works. Frequency moves quickly. So every single action or reaction or lack thereof, even procrastination is a behavior. But it is a frequency. It is a thought. It's still circumstance of a belief or a thought. Yes?
Absolutely. And the armchair psychologist in me can't help but go to conduct disorders,
Okay.
personality disorders and conduct disorders. And, where those arise, what their origins and roots might be in very simplistic terms. And so for me, those kind of behaviors really do come down to an internal setting
Yeah.
that is almost a permission.
Yeah.
There is an internal belief system that gives itself permission to do and to say and to behave in certain ways that even the whole of society could condemn, and yet the self-concept does not. And so for me, that permission, because that's where our will lies, right? That permission is such a key. If I find myself doing something that is less than ideal, what I need to do is not just correct the behavior externally, but I need to revoke the permission that I have given myself in my will to actually choose that conduct, to actually express that kind of behavior. And then perhaps I could address the thoughts that underlie it. Why do I believe and think the things that I do that then cause me to conduct myself in a certain way and to have certain behaviors, responses, and reactions? It's about revoking that permission, actually requiring more from ourselves. That's a big deal for me.
Mhm. Same. I'm always asking why of myself. Why do I do this? Why am I thinking this? Why can't I let this go? Why? Can you give an example that people might be able to relate to kind of bring that concept down into tangible terms?
Well, the strongest one that comes up for me is that now that I'm in my 50s, I'm really a mellow person. I'm really very peaceful most of the time. People who know me in real life will talk about how amazingly calm my energy is and how they catch that calmness from me. And it's all gentle and lovely. But I was not that way at all when I was young. Believe it or not, I'm a very high energy person and I can be really intense. I've got a lot of sparkle and when I get excited, it can come on really strong. And in its negative aspect, when I was younger, man, was that a fiery temper. I was the door slamming, plate throwing queen. And I grew up with an example from more than one person that said it was okay to behave that way.
Mhm.
In fact, to such an extent that I'd never consciously examined whether it was okay or not
Yeah.
to behave that way. It
Yeah.
was my normal. That was how you behaved.
Yeah.
If you were angry or you were upset or someone did the smallest little thing, then it was no holds barred in terms of your own conduct. And it took me coming into relationship with someone for whom that was completely not true. And to have that person look at me and go, wow, that's wild. Like, why do you behave yourself like that? To catch myself and go, like what? What do you mean? Because it was my normal.
Yeah.
And to actually be confronted for the first time with the fact that, hey, I've actually given myself permission to be this kind of a person. Yes, you can have those strong emotions. I still do to this day. They haven't dissipated at all. But I would never conduct myself that way ever again. I haven't since before I was 20. Because this person that I valued so much confronted me about the permission I was giving myself in terms of how I was conducting myself in the world. Your emotions, your moods are not permission slips to
Yeah.
treat other people less than lovingly or disrespectfully. And so for me, that was a profound personal choice moment where I literally went to the bathroom. I looked myself in my own eyes in the mirror and I asked myself out loud, is this who you want to be?
Yeah.
And I answered myself, I said, no. And I made a vow to myself, a sacred vow that I've never broken, that I would never behave that way again. And it is about revoking that permission, revoking that consent, and requiring more from the self. Was it difficult sometimes not to slam the door and not to throw the plate? Oh, yeah. I white knuckled it for quite a few years. But now I have learned how to have really strong and intense emotions and not express them in negative conduct. I've learned not to speak until I am in control of how I feel.
And I think that's the biggest key for me is, I'm a Scorpio. We can lash that tail and sting faster than you will even know what happened. And I did many times. And it wasn't even intentional. It was just this fire in me that would just ignite immediately. And it would be in hindsight that you would have the regret and the embarrassment and the the remorse for how you behaved. And similar to you, I was like, I really don't want to be this person anymore. This doesn't feel like who I really am. I gotta figure this out. This is not how I want to be behaving, and it's also not how I want to treat others. It's not how I want to be perceived. How can I do this better? How can I do this more effectively? How can I do this in a way that doesn't shut me down, but also doesn't leave me a doormat? And it wasn't
Yes.
easy for me either. It was really this hazy, bumpy, sometimes face planty kind of process until you do arrive at that point where you really understand what it means to practice the pause. Just give me a moment. I will work through this, but I do need a moment. And sometimes in the beginning, those moments were a week before I could finally settle down and be able to have the conversation that really some people can have in an instant. I can have them in an instant now. But like
Yeah.
anything else, you don't go from learning how to walk to pedaling a bike like a professional and doing races in France. It's a process. It's a process of learning. But that pause is priceless.
Yeah. And for me, the balance, getting the balance right between the self and whoever the other is. Because here's a challenging one. we're pretty good at recognizing negative, like outright negative conduct and behavior.
Mhm.
And then as we mature, correcting that in ourselves. Other people serve as mirrors for that very well for us. But what about all the ways in which there's no balance to our positivity?
Mhm. Yeah.
Again, if I have to use myself, I am an overgiver
Yes, you
to an
are.
extreme extent. And I'm using the present tense because I'm not over it. I'm not over it. I've gotten better than I used to be. But I was so bad that that's not saying much. This is something that I am still present tense having to work on myself about. Because the extent to which it has become an acceptable behavior for me, the way that I feel safe, the way my role in life is to give and give and give and give, even when it hurts, even when it's detrimental, even when it's literally bad. I will give and give and give and give. And there are many kind of examples like that, where it looks loving and it looks positive and it looks, virtuous. But at its heart, it's so imbalanced that it
Yeah.
is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Learning where to draw those lines, to hold a boundary without guilt, to be able to say no. I think this challenges so many people. And the more we tell ourselves we get naughty badges for it, the more we tell ourselves this makes me a good person. This is a loving and a lovely thing that I do. Is it? Really?
Right.
Really? In the balance, how much are you hurting? How often are you saying yes when you don't want to? How often are you giving what you cannot?
Yeah.
And I don't just mean materially,
Right.
energetically,
Right.
spiritually, in terms of investment of your time. How much of that do we do, but it's not authentic? It's not coming
Yeah.
from a heart that wants to. It's coming from that drive that for some reason must. And so I think in many respects, it's those behaviors that are even more challenging than stop saying the F word every second sentence.
Well, I agree because we justify those behaviors, right? We justify them as good and
Yeah.
positive, and that's what we should do. We should, XYZ, and we have a harder time recognizing the excess, recognizing the extreme of that behavior. So I'm with you. Any extreme behavior should be looked at, and possibly we should
Mm-hmm.
reflect on that and really ask ourselves the same questions. Is this really serving me? Is this really serving anyone for me to be demonstrating this extreme? And I think if we can be really honest with ourselves, we're going to realize that's a no. We're going to realize that there's a difference between being a giving person and giving yourself away completely. So there's nothing even left.
Use life as a mirror to allow the people in our lives and our relationships to serve to show us what these patterns in ourselves are, because so often we're blind to them. So if you have an advantage taker in your life, why is that mirror there? What is it trying to show you? If you have what they call the energy vampires in your life who drain you and take up your time, why is that person there? Why have you gifted yourself that mirror? What is it trying to show you? Because everyone and everything in our lives is serving us to see what those unconscious thoughts, self-concepts, and beliefs are that are creating these behaviors, because the behaviors are the symptom. They're not the problem. There is something inside that is just causing those behaviors, feeling compelled to those behaviors. And that is what we need to look at. And so the people in our lives, good, bad, and ugly, serve that purpose.
Yeah, I'm thinking of people in my life and already exploring that. It's true, you know, the people in our life are our greatest gifts. They they will teach us everything that we want to know about ourselves if we let them. If we have the courage to really look and ask the challenging questions inside of ourselves and really understand what that reflection is. Like you said, everybody, even strangers that we might have interactions with, they're all a reflection for us in some way. And it's actually really beautiful when you realize that every interaction you have can be a reflection of something. And you know, maybe at some point you get to a point where that's not necessarily true, but I think for people who are just kind of starting to embark on this journey, it can start to look as at people as a reflection. What are you showing me? What opportunity do I
Yeah,
have here? I think it can be really beautiful at times. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, of course, but sometimes it's actually really
yeah.
beautiful.
You know, we have teachers that we love, people and events and circumstances in our lives that teach us and we love it. And then we have teachers that we loathe, and they tend to be the more important ones because it is exactly that we are rejecting, that we are projecting for ourselves to see. So yes, like them or loathe them, everyone and everything is a teacher if we'll let it be.
I couldn't agree more. Any final thoughts that you can think of on this topic?
Grace. Grace for the self.
Hmm.
Every time that our behavior doesn't quite meet the standard that we're reaching for, every time we face plant, like you say, every time we're just human,
Yeah,
we're not perfect.
yeah,
We react, we respond. Grace. We live in a
yeah,
universe of grace, so can we please have some for ourselves? Can we just go a little easier on ourselves? Yeah.
yeah.
And just be okay with the fact that we're not going to do it all right all the time, and that's all right.
I can't think of a more beautiful ending. Thank you for that reminder of grace. Thank you for connecting with Light for Life. Please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you would like to work with one of us, you can find our contact information in the About section.
Please share your insights, your questions, and your comments with us. We value your feedback. And we really hope that we will see you for our next episode. We upload one every Thursday.
Until we connect again, we send you love and light.